Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Skåne in the very south of Sweden, and we're going to return to one of my local breweries that I really quite like, but it's been a bit difficult over the last wee while to get a hold of some of their beers, but in recent months they do seem to have been kind of kicking it up a notch in terms of getting their beers out there, so long may that continue. For this review then we are going to go to Hyllie, which is a little bit to the south of Malmö, and we're having a look at my fourth beer involving Hyllie Bryggeri. So the very first review that I did from this brewery was the Hyllipan, which is their West Coast IPA, usually a 6.5% beer, quite a classic, almost homebrewed style IPA. But the last beer you would have seen me review from them was the Hyllipan Appelsine, where they'd added a little bit of orange to the brew. This time we have the Hyllipan Grapefrukt, which is obviously kind of the same thing, except they've added a little bit of grapefruit into it this time. But this particular beer, obviously it's a West Coast IPA coming in at 6.5% with a wee bit of grapefruit added into the beer as well. So really curious to see how this one turns out. I did enjoy the Hyllipan Appelsine, but if memory serves me correctly, I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as the original one. The other beer that I've had involving Hyllie Bryggeri was the Midnight Stout, which was a collaboration with Brygger. I think that one came out like Christmas 2018 or not long after that, but that was a very nice beer as well. You know, I've had other beers from Hyllie Bryggeri on tap around Malmö, but they don't kind of release all that many of them through bottles and things like that. But I did see in the Systembolaget in Hansa, they either had a lager or a paleo that had been released as well, so I'll need to see if I can review that one for you at some point soon as well. But in my opinion, a really nice brewery. I've had some very good experiences with these guys in the past, and if you find yourself in Malmö, do keep an eye out for the original Hyllipan. That's a really solid kind of old school IPA in my mind. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Really curious to see how this beer turns out. I know my friend Peter over at the Clueless Drinker, he absolutely loves IPAs that have grapefruit added to them, so this is maybe one that I'll need to take across for him at some point, but really curious to see how this turns out, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hyllie Bryggeri before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, province, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Hyllie Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Hyllie Bryggeri basically started off as the home brewing experiments of Michael Nathorst, who is originally from Vintria, only a few minutes to the south of Hyllie, which again is to the south of Malmö. But for a number of years he was a home brewer, and he built up his own brewery in his garage and was experimenting with different beers along with his friends, and he started brewing there back in around 2013. But he worked for a number of years in the plumbing industry, and for a period of time he was working 4 days a week as a plumber and the final day with his brewery. But he's good friends as well with Torsten Ekne, who was the original owner of Beer Ditch in Malmö. And when Beer Ditch was kind of beginning, if you like, Michael decided that he would turn his garage brewery into a proper brewery, and so he registered Hyllie Bryggeri officially in 2015. Over the next few years he kind of went on with it and started getting his name out there in local bars and stuff around Malmö. But in 2019 the brewery joined forces with Psycho Pipes and Limhamns Brygeri to create a new company that together owns a brewery building, and it's there that the three companies brew their beer. So they've got a 1,000 litre brew kit, and they're hoping to open up a tasting bar together at some point in the near future. And as far as I know, Hyllie Bryggeri have produced in the region of 25 or so different beers as of February 2020 when I'm reviewing this beer for you. There's quite a few beers that they produce just simply for you know, keg and things like that that go out around the bars, but in terms of bottles I've only ever seen maybe about 4 different beers in the bottles, or 5 if you include the collaboration with Brygeri. That's the original Hyllipan, the Appelsine, the Grapefruit, this one here, the one that I saw that was either the Pale Ale or the Pilsner, and then the Midnight Stout that they did with Brygeri as well. But since they now have their own kind of brewing space that they're sharing, I'm sure they'll get a few more beers out there over the next little while, and hopefully they continue to grow actually. So yeah, I wish them the best of luck. But a really nice little brewery, and if you want a proper old school West Coast IPA, then I can highly recommend the Hyllipan for you. I really enjoyed reviewing that beer. That must have been about 2 years ago or something that I reviewed that beer, so it's always nice to return to these guys. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Hyllie Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I think this beer was released as part of the local and Småsigligt assortment in February of 2020. I forget if it was the 2nd or 3rd of February that these beers were released, because the 1st of February was a Saturday, I think. So probably it was the 3rd that it was released. But yeah, kind of the presentation on this one is very similar to the other ones that we've had, and of course the symbol for Hyllie Bryggeri is the water tower that you'll see when you go past the, I want to call it the Emporia mall that's down there, one of the biggest in Scandinavia. But yeah, really nicely presented beer, this one. It says this one is dry hopped with Mosaic and Citra, and it's got an extra twist with zesty grapefruit added into it as well. So yeah, best before the 23rd of October 2020. Plain black bottle cap on this one, 6.5% West Coast IPA, 330 millilitres, and there you can see brewed and bottled in beautiful Malmö. So yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. And I'm really curious to see what this one has in store for us. The last beer I had from these guys, as I said, was the Appelsine Hyllipan, which was, you know, it was nice, but I wasn't really sure that I preferred it over the original. So I'm really curious to see how this one kind of compares to that, because I think for me the original Hyllipan it really is just a very nostalgic beer that I could sit and session away actually. So I'm not sure if they can really convince me that you can improve upon that actually. So as I say, this is a really interesting beer for me. I've not had too many beers where they've added grapefruit into it. I've not reviewed all that many fruit beers on the channel, to be honest with you, but since it was this brewery that was doing it, I thought, you know, let's have a go at this one. So yeah, as you can see with this beer then, it's poured actually quite a nice hazy, bright, goldeny orange colour. There was a solid quarter finger of a head there. It was kind of an ivory coloured head, but it's just faded away to be a very thin foamy layer now, a sort of ivory cream coloured head. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but you know, overall it does look very, very nice. You know, this one is a little bit more hazy than I remember the original Hyllipan being, but if you're adding fruit into the brew, that's going to happen, to be honest. The fruit will give you a little bit of that haze, and it does say on the side that they have wheat malt in this one, which is only going to kind of amplify the effect actually. So yeah, interesting looking beer this. So let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we go on. Nothing overly surprising with this beer in terms of its appearance. Yeah, straight away with this one, it actually, to me it comes across as very well balanced. The grapefruit is quite present there, but it actually smells a lot sweeter and juicier than I was expecting. Could it be pink grapefruit rather than regular grapefruit? Because you do get a good bit of the kind of original hoppy characters that you would expect from Citra and Mosaic. That's a really interesting point to make about this beer. You can definitely smell the IPA underneath it, but to me, grapefruit has always been it's always struck me as a very kind of pungent fruit, to be honest, that would dominate flavour. I mean, a few videos before this, I reviewed the juicy yuzu from Brygeri, and the yuzu just dominated the flavour, and the aroma incidentally too, but the grapefruit doesn't really do that with this one. That's an interesting note that I would make about this beer. So yeah, you can smell the grapefruit in there, but it's really a lot more juicy and sweet than I was expecting it to be. I thought it would be really pungent and just dominate the aroma. But in fairness, underneath that, you can pick up some lovely oily tangerine oranges that will be from the Mosaic. There is a little bit of that mango note coming out from the Citra as well. You can pick out those two hops in this beer. I can't remember actually if the original Hyllipan, if it had Amarillo in it rather than Citra, but I'm just surprised at how sort of how balanced this one comes across, because I would have really thought that the grapefruit would dominate the aroma here, but you can get those lovely juicy fruity notes out of it. You can even pick out some of the complexities that you'd normally get from Citra as well. There is a little bit of a gooseberry-ish type quality to this beer too, so that's a really interesting point to make about this one. It's a very fruity leaning beer, this, but it really comes across as pretty well balanced in my mind. In terms of the hoppy characters then, you can pick out a nice little bit of a floral aromaticity there. I mean, both Citra and Mosaic are quite high in their alpha acids. I think Citra's like 11-12%, and I think Mosaic's slightly higher, like 13-14%. And you can definitely pick out a good little bit of that floral aromatic spice in the beer. You've got a little bit of grassiness in there as well, and also a teeny bit of earthiness, and the earthiness will be coming from the Mosaic. But Mosaic has this really distinctive little bit of earthiness in there. But yeah, I'm surprised at how much the hops are jumping out of this one at me. In terms of the malt base then, there's a lovely sort of white bready base to the beer. You can definitely get a little bit of a kind of sweet, caramelly note in the middle there. There's a wee bit of a biscuit, like a McVitie's digestive kind of thing, and there's also one or two little woody undertones to this. But to me, the malt base comes across as very smooth with the bready qualities, but also quite sweet actually. So to me, this one comes across as being a little bit more balanced than I remember from the Appleseed one. And I mean, it's going to depend on what variety of oranges and grapefruits and things you actually use in the beer. But this one to me, it really strikes me as being a little bit more balanced in terms of the aroma than what I remember with the Appleseed. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. As I always say, take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But let's see how we get on with this. This one is the Hyllipan Grapefrukt, coming in at 6.5%, a West Coast IPA with grapefruit added to the brew from Hyllie Bryggeri, just to the south of Malmö, here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål. Yeah, the grapefruit in this beer, it really is, it does take over the flavour a little bit, but not overly much. Maybe I need to rethink my opinion on grapefruit now, but this beer does have a really nice little bit of balance to it, I have to say. Thumbs up to Hyllie Bryggeri for this one. I might even go as far as saying that I prefer this to the Hyllipan Appleseed, and that's interesting, because I do tend to gravitate more towards the orangey sort of IPAs, the more citrusy ones rather than the more kind of tropical ones actually. So this one's made me think a little bit, and that's always a good thing when you've done 2,000 odd beer reviews. But you definitely can feel the grapefruit taking an influence in this beer. So let's try and just break down the flavour of this one a little bit. The more I drink of it, in fairness, it sort of contradicts the statement that I've just made about the grapefruit being quite balanced. It does start to take over the beer. I can feel the grapefruit almost in the back corners of the palate, so that's interesting. But yeah, let's look at the malt base first then. So straight away with this beer, you can feel that nice kind of white bready, wheaty quality. That just blankets the middle of your tongue. It thickens up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, but if you go to the very centre of your palate, You can pick out that little bit of a sweet kind of caramelly note to the beer. It's not toasted, it's not too thick, it just has that little bit of caramelly sweetness in there, which is nice. And as you move out from it, as you move a little bit out towards the front corners of your palate, you start to get a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of quality to this beer as well, which is interesting. So yeah, that's it is really nice. This is, to me, it strikes me as a very oily IPA, which, you know, that's a kind of common trait for a West Coast IPA. But the flavours are, even though the grapefruit does start to kind of dominate later on, it doesn't feel overly powerful, if that makes sense. It does kind of just blend in with everything else, but you do get it resonating there the further you go into the flavour with this beer. But the malt base for me is pretty straight up, very smooth, quite sweet in the middle and a little bit biscuity towards the edge of the palate, and it just kind of sits and lingers there. So let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer then. Back corners of the palate, you do get some nice kind of earthy notes in there, and that adds a little bit of contrast to the beer. But as you come further forward along the sides of the palate, you do get a nice little bit of a kind of floral, spicy note to the beer, but you can feel the grapefruit is just kind of pushing into that almost. You can really feel the grapefruit just pushing in and sort of almost amplifying that kind of bitter effect that you're getting out of this beer. As you go round the front curve of the palate though, it does get a little bit more lighter and grassy, but at the same time you can feel a little bit of zestiness and that kind of zesty freshness coming off the front of your palate as well. So that's a really interesting point about this one, because normally if you wanted a bit of that kind of zesty, kind of resinous type quality, you would use something like Chinook, or if you wanted it to be a bit more kind of floral and spicy, you might use Columbus. But as far as I know, they do just use Citra and Mosaic in this one. So I'd be curious to know if there is another bittering hop in this beer. And I'm sure Michael actually messaged me at one point and told me about that, but I really can't remember. But you really feel the thing that happens is whenever you add fruit into a beer, what it does, it always goes to the edge of your palate and takes away a little bit from the bitterness of the beer. It suppresses a little bit of the kind of floral, grassy side of the beer. So to be honest with you with this one, it's difficult to pick out how many IBUs it is, because the grapefruit itself does have its own inherent sourness and kind of bitterness, if you like. So to actually pick out whether I don't know if you can count the sourness from the grapefruit as IBUs or whether it's strictly the hops. It's quite difficult to pick out exactly where the bitterness is coming from in this one, because some of it obviously is from the hops and some of it's from the grapefruit that's coming out around the edge of your palate actually. So yeah, this one contrasts from its aroma a little bit. I thought it would be really well balanced, and to some degree it is. The malt base is quite well balanced, but I think the grapefruit sort of dominates the flavours that are coming out of the hops when I think about it. So yeah, as I always say, when it comes to the hoppy side of the beer, you get that little oily bubble behind the front curve of your palate, and that's where the fruity, juicy esters start to push their way out of the beer. And if you go to the back of that oily bubble, you do start to get some of the grapefruity notes, and I think that will be from the Citra. I don't think that's from the fruit that's actually being added into the beer. But as you come further forward from that, for me, it really does make quite a quick transition to a big oily orange. And normally Mosaic is quite a light, juicy, kind of tangerine sort of thing, but I find that Mosaic is behaving in a little bit more of an oily kind of manner in this beer. I'm not getting too much in the way of a sort of mango-y type quality as you might normally get from Citra. There is maybe a little bit of it there, but I think the hoppy side of this beer really leans towards the Mosaic rather than the Citra in my mind. And maybe there's a few flavours of like gooseberry or something like that. There is a wee bit of that lemon limey zest that you can sometimes get from Citra as well, pushing its way out in the aftertaste. But around the very front curve of the tongue, it really does have quite a bit of a kind of citrusy, zesty quality, and that's most definitely coming from the grapefruit in this. So when I think about it, This beer is quite interesting because when I think back to the apple scene, I would have thought that with Mosaic in here, the oranges would have balanced out with it a little bit better, but the grapefruit almost offers a little bit of a contrast and then balances out the other things that are going on in this. So I might be inclined to say that I like this one a bit better than the apple scene, but I think, again, I don't think this one beats the original. So it's interesting to make that point. I don't know what other fruits they could add to this, right enough, but it is a pretty nice beer, this one, a fruit West Coast IPA. I've not had one of these in a good number of years actually, because all the fruit IPAs you're getting now are sort of New England hazy type IPAs. But what I will say is that it's another really pretty solid beer actually, and I do think this one might be a little bit, it might be a little bit more to my tastes than the apple scene, the orange version was. But as it stands, it is a really quite nice beer, but I don't think it quite beats the original in my mind. But maybe I'm a bit biased because I love that sort of old school West Coast IPA, so take that statement with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But what I will say, solid beer from Hyllie Bryggeri, and you know, keep the experimentation coming. It's always nice to have new beers to review from Hyllie Bryggeri. So yeah, have a go at this one for yourself and just see what you think. This beer is pretty damn solid, I have to say. So yeah. If you like a big oily West Coast IPA, if you're missing that sort of sweet malt base and big oily fruitiness and a slightly stronger bitterness, then this one will kind of suit you down to the ground. In terms of the mouthfeel then, that's the last thing we need to talk about. So I would say that this beer is quite, it's at the top end of mid-bodied, pushing full-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth. It does have a wee bit of crispness in the beginning, right enough, and overall the mouthfeel of this one is pretty oily. I think I said the same for the apple scene version. So the fruit, I think when you add fruit into a beer, it really does make the mouth feel more oily. So this is a very oily beer in my mind. In terms of the hoppy bitterness, and this is, I said, where I think we might struggle. I think this one, I think it's about 60 IBUs, but the grapefruit might push it a little bit higher than that. It could be around 70. But I don't know what the rule is, whether you consider grapefruit and the bitterness that it brings in the same kind of, in the same plane, if you like, as the bitterness from the hops. But there is a good bit of bitterness. It's a proper West Coast IPA. This, make no mistake about that. It's about twice the bitterness of a regular kind of New England hazy IPA. So a good little bit of bitterness to the beer. The malt base is very smooth. It's got a little bit of an oily quality to it, which helps promote the sweeter qualities that it has, and the fruitiness in this beer has a lovely big oily quality to it as well. But overall, this is a really nice beer. I would be tempted to say that I prefer this one to the apple scene that was produced before, but I'm not sure that I would place this above the original Hyllipan, to be honest. But regardless, it's another nice beer from Hyllie Bryggeri, and it's nice to have something else to review from these guys. So yeah, thumbs up to them for this, and it's nice to have a big oily West Coast IPA as a bit of a contrast to these kind of hazy New England things that are floating around just now. So yeah, have a go at this beer for yourself and see what you think. I think it can be ordered nationwide through Systembolaget, if I'm remembering correctly, so I would recommend that you have a taste of the original Hyllipan and then maybe try this one if you get the chance. But in my mind, quite a nice little brewery, and I'm glad that I was able to review this one for you here on the channel. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hyllie Bryggeri as well. No doubt we'll return to these guys at some point soon. Hopefully they continue to release some more beers, especially when they've got that new brewery. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys very soon. This one is the Hyllipan Grapefrukt, a 6.5% West Coast style IPA with grapefruit added to it from Hyllie Bryggeri in Hyllie, just to the south of Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Slanja, skål, cheers, catch you very soon. Make sure you check out this beer.